Welcome back to Elden Ring. By the end of this video, you will have a much better understanding of the classes in the game. I have over 8 days experience with the game. I've been doing a lot of research, and even though technically there is a little bit of importance with the classes, when you're about 5, maybe 10 hours into the game, that importance pretty much comes to nothing. So it's only at the very, very beginning that these classes are going to make any difference to your gameplay at all. So in the game, there are 10 classes. They are going to vary from melee attacks to ranged all the way up to magic. What's more important than picking your class is actually picking your keepsake. I always, no matter which class I'm using, go with the golden seed because it's going to give you an extra flask use. The flasks in the game are incredibly important. Depending on how you've built your character, you're going to either scale it so you've got more blue or more red. The blue ones will replenish your FP or your mana. The red ones are going to do your health. There are also things called sacred tears that you can find at the churches and stuff in the game, and they are going to increase the potency of your flasks, meaning if you use a red one at level 1, you could possibly get, 200 health back, and then at level 2, it's going to replenish maybe 400 instead of 200. This game goes into so much depth, it's absolutely crazy. The game is huge. And one thing that people really struggle with is picking the right class. And I've done videos saying which ones I believe are best. You've got Vagabond, you've got Wretch for your first ever playthrough because it's just the complete experience in one package. You start off pretty much naked, you've just got a club, you have to go around and every loot drop feels really good. But after a lot of time playing the game, I realised that it doesn't matter which class you start with because you could completely change your playstyle the further you get into it. For an example, I'm an astrologer at level 139. I've got 40 vigour, I've got 30 strength on an astrologer. I've got 37 dexterity, 65 intelligence, 25 faith. I actually regret putting so many points into intelligence because I've found a lot of better stuff in the game that will require strength. There are some things that are going to boost, like your scaling, and you're going to have better attacks and stuff based on your intelligence, but there are other stats you can focus on too. If you start the game as a samurai, you're not going to put all of your points into endurance for the stamina to use katanas, because for all you know, you could love katanas, but you could find a spell that you think is the absolute best, so you're then going to want to pump some points into intelligence. When it comes to armor, there is way more that's easily obtained for melee classes than what there is for magic builds. But armor pretty much just gives you a fashion, like it's what they look like. They do have resistance stats there, but because you're an astrologer, you're not necessarily going to always run the best looking mage armor because that armor is not going to defend you against physical attacks. If you're taking on a boss that is using physical attacks, you want an armor on your character regardless of your class that is going to benefit you better and have more resistance for those physical attacks. A lot of it is known as fashion souls. You pick up these armor pieces because they look really nice. So overall, the classes, they are just more to give you a little bit of help and guidance when you first start. You're going to think, I start as an astrologer, I'm going to focus on spells and magic, I'm going to start as a samurai, I'm going to start looking into different katanas and things like that. But it can all very easily change the further you get into the game. It has for me. You would think being a samurai is going to give you the best benefit for katana wielding, and yeah, that might be a little bit true because you do start with an uchi katana, however you can find one, playing the game as any class. So unless you're wanting to dual wield uchi katanas, and there are plenty of katanas available in the game that are much better, but unless you really, really want the 2 uchi katanas, you don't need to. And even if you do really want them and you haven't started as a samurai, when you go through to New Game Plus, you can end up having 2. But as an astrologer, based on the stats that I've built up and how I've built my character, I can run overpowered bleed builds using katanas. I can run incredible builds that focus on strength stats and whatever else because I've looked at the points I need to distribute into those stats and I've built it from there. So everything you're looking at in terms of your build, I want to run the Sword of Night and Flame. You can just go find that on any class and just pump the stats into it to use it and then just build it from there. If you want to run the Moon Veil and a Lightning Uchi Katana like I have in the past, you can just build for it no matter which character you start as. So realistically, it's more about your stat distribution and finding a balance for your stats. That's why I have 65 intelligence. My base stat is actually 60, however I do run a talisman that boosts it by 5. My dexterity is 37, that's for a sword I found off one of the later game bosses. My strength is also 30, that's for one of the weapons I found in the game. My vigor is 40 because that's like a primary stat, and that is based on your health and your survivability. Mind, again, is a primary stat that's focused on your FP. Then endurance is also a primary stat because that's focused on your stamina and your equip load, so which sort of armor you can run without ending up fat rolling and having a heavy load. The one thing I don't recommend in this game is using a heavy load. Make sure it's medium or light because you get much faster rolls, you can avoid attacks a lot easier. That will also improve your survivability. And then in terms of the stats, you're going to have to look into this for a lot more detail, but if you want to run a mage, there is a spell that's going to cost a max of 70 intelligence. But that spell isn't that good, so maybe the best one in the game runs at 65, so don't put any more than 65 points into your intelligence. And yeah, we're talking about a lot of high numbers for your stats, but eventually when you go through the new games and all that sort of stuff, the new game plus, you're going to have really, really high stats. You can start working on your character leveling from really, really early in the game. There's so many rune farms in the game, it's unbelievable. So you can easily go from, I'm really frustrated, I'm going to put my fist through my monitor, I'm going to yeet my controller against the wall. You can go from all of that incredibly easily up to, this is going to be my next boss. I'm going to go here and get this weapon because this weapon's going to help me with the boss that I've been stuck on for the last couple of days. You can do things like that. So again, it takes out the importance from picking your character class. Another example is some of the best swords and shields in the game require no more than 50 strength. So when you are looking into building your character, get yourself up to 50 strength, wield your sword or your shield, then pump a load more points into vigor so that you're more tanky. And if you do make any mistakes, say for an example you found this amazing sword, it requires 45 strength and you've only got 40, it's going to take you hours to farm all the runes. When you get later in the game, you can respec. You can find these items that give you the ability to basically redistribute all of your points. So there's never a time where your points are wasted because you can respec and start all over again with your stats. And another thing you could do is you could put 50 points into vigor, thinking I'm going to be this absolute beast that will never die, and then you'll realise that you're not dying, so maybe you've put too many points in. You can respec later in the game, and you could put extra points into strength to make your sword even stronger. So again, you're not dying because you have so many points in vigor, but you've distributed a few more points into strength, which makes your sword stronger, and essentially you get the boss taken down even faster. It's more about your knowledge of the game over anything else. As I said, I've got over 8 days of playtime in Elden Ring. And this is a Souls game. It's designed to be hard, but because I have an understanding of the game, I could go and take down Godric, who's the first major boss of the game, in a few hours with a fresh character of any class in the game, because I know where everything is located so that I can be strong early. One of the best tips I can give you when you're fighting bosses is just learn their movesets, learn how to avoid their attacks. One of the late game bosses, the Dragon Lords, took me 2.5 hours just to take that one boss down, and that's non-stop trying for 2.5 hours, or around 2 hours or so. And that's because I tried so many different builds, trying to figure out what was the strongest thing to use against this boss, instead of just learning the attacks, surviving longer, so figuring out how to avoid them, what sort of attacks the bosses does in each of its phases, and then with the extra survivability of learning the attacks, as long as I was putting in the damage, I eventually got the boss killed. Another thing is, you can explore a massive portion of this game without needing to ever engage in any combat. So even if you are really weak, but you're close to getting to this rune farm, and it's going to get you loads of runes to level up, you just go and explore, don't do any combat, get your runes, level up, go back and do the combat, you're a lot stronger. With your runes and leveling up, you're going to be able to use some of the much more powerful items in the game, so it's going to make progress a lot easier. It's going to be a massive help to progressing in the game. There was a time, I know the game hasn't been out for too long, but there was a time where 500,000 runes per hour was insane. But now it's moved super quick into the millions per hour from just people having more knowledge of the game. And not only that, the further you get into the game, the longer it's going to take to level up. My levels now are about 135,000 runes per level or something crazy. But when you find these rune farms and you follow them and you're sitting there even for 20 minutes at a time, you're going to be getting all of those runes, leveling up, becoming stronger in the game. You go back to the earlier parts, you deal with the bosses, then you find that little block again, you just move on. You just keep progressing slowly over time. That's why I love the open world aspect of this. If I got stuck on Margit, one of the first bosses you're going to face, I would go and do a little bit of exploration, I'd go and grab myself 100,000 runes or something like that, put some points into where I'm lacking, so maybe strength to make the power of my sword a little bit better, or vigour to increase my survivability, go back into Margit, take Margit down, find the next block, do the same thing again, so on and so forth. Not only that, but Elden Ring has 7 New Game Plus slots per character from what I have seen, and each one becomes harder and harder because the bosses get stronger, everything awards more runes, but that does slow down. I've seen the Dragon Lord awards 500,000 the first time you take him down, 1 million in New Game Plus, and then 1.1 million in New Game Plus 2. So the progression does slow down with the extra runes, but these bosses are going to continue to get tougher and tougher and tougher. So your first playthrough is probably actually going to be the easiest, but it's also going to be used to figure things out, and even after 100 plus hours on a single character for me, I've still got a lot to learn about my build, about my character, so on and so forth, where I'm going to put my stats, literally everything. So the one tip I have for everyone when you are starting this game is do not stress about the class you are starting with. Pick one that you think is going to be a fun start, and just build it from there. As I said, you can start with an astrologer, you can end up becoming a crazy bleed build with katanas and everything like that, similar to a samurai. If you start with a samurai, you could end up becoming the strongest spell-wielding mage in the entire game. It's all about the progression, not so much about the start of the game. But what we're going to do is leave the video there, let me know your thoughts and stuff in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed it.